The gentleman from California, Mr. Tom McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of Yogi Berra's celebrated observations was that predictions are hard, especially when they involve the future. And I think that's the fine point of the matter. We should have learned from the outlandishly wrong COVID projections a few years ago, or the embarrassingly wrong climate projections, that we mortals are not very good at peering into the future. And that's a failure I've watched with respect to budget projections over the 16 years of my tenure in Congress. We're not only terrible at making them, but we tend to use them to avoid making tough decisions in the here and now. That's the J. Wellington Wimpy School of Budgeting. I'll gladly give you $2 of savings 10 years from now for $1 of new spending today. If we focus on the present, on spending reductions and program reforms now, in the present, the future is going to take care of itself. But if we use the future as an excuse not to set things right in the present, no projection is going to protect us from the consequences. I've said this over and over. The only budget that matters is the budget before us today, not the budget that we might take up 10 years from now. This is a fantasy that diverts us from our responsibility right now. We also tend to focus on spending levels without much attention on how that money is being spent. Time and again, I hear appropriators boast that they've appropriated within the limits that we've set, and that's good. But there seems to be little interest in where that money's actually going, how it's being spent, and I'm constantly appalled to see where it goes. Hundreds of billions of dollars that take federal revenues and spend them on projects that exclusively benefit individual communities or politically connected interests or NGOs. Hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidies that prop up failing businesses that can't make it based on their own merits. And unauthorized appropriations that are made in violation of our own rules and that routinely fund much of the government because our authorizing committees won't review the efficacy of the agencies that are under their control. Churchill said it best. He said, the farther back we look, the farther ahead we can see. And perhaps we should look back at how these programs were performing and why we keep throwing good money after bad rather than while we're trying to peer into the future. I think we'll find that asking these questions will put us on a much better road to that future. So much of our bold new ideas have been tried many times before. Kamala Harris's price controls, for example. I mean, we've been trying those since the days of Hammurabi 6,000 years ago, and they always produce a shortage of whatever's price is being controlled. So perhaps before we try the next bold new idea, we ought to first look back and ask how it worked the last 10 times we tried it. I agree with the chairman. Mr. Lopez is to be commended for reading the 1974 Budget Act. But, Mr. Chairman, reading the Budget Act is easy. Following it is hard. And that's what we failed to do under both Republican and Democratic majorities. And by not following it, we placed the nation's finances in a perilous condition. So I say again, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. Mr. Swagel, what I'd like to see us focus on is subsidies of every kind. The beauty of a free market is that consumers get to vote every day with every dollar they spend on what the economy will produce, what prices they're willing to pay, who best produces it. Subsidies distort those price signals. Robbing St. Petersburg to pay St. Paul. Projects that exclusively benefit local communities ought to be paid exclusively by those local communities rather than robbing their neighbors. Unauthorized appropriations. Appropriations for agencies whose authorizations lapsed years ago, and yet we still keep shoveling money at them without asking if they're even still relevant, let alone effective. And let me now pose to you, what would you add to this list?
No, I was going to say that's something we're working, I'm not sure. The unauthorized appropriations is a really hard one. We have an annual report. We have a project to use some of these large language models, AI, to improve that, to match up authorizations to outlays, the authorizations in language. So
well, I'd like to see a focus from your office on what we're spending subsidizing interests of what we're doing that is diverting national resources to exclusively local interests. And again, the agencies that we have failed to review and yet keep shoveling more money toward.
Okay, understood. No, thank you.